So one of the first things I want to talk about is the charges in the case. As in this particular case, as I've talked about before, there are 7 defendants, and there are 3 charges. The first charge is conspiracy to impede or interfere with federal officers. The second charge is possession of firearms in a federal facility. And one thing that I want to point out is that the way this particular firearms charge is alleged is that it is based on the possession of a firearm while in commission of another crime. So just the fact that they had firearms alone at the wildlife refuge is not sufficient to meet the government's burden of proof. The government has to prove that they possessed firearms while they were committing another crime at the refuge. And the third charge only applies to one person in this case, and that's defendant Ken Medenbach. He's charged with theft of government assets. He's charged with basically stealing a wildlife refuge pickup and driving it to Safeway and Burns to get groceries. Now, let's think about some of the elements of these charges, and I want to start with the last one, which is that theft of government property. The way it's defined is that the government has to be deprived of the use of that property. So the government has to show that Mr. Medenbach took that property, in other words the truck, the vehicle, with the intention of depriving the federal government of its use and with the intention of not returning it. So the government has to show that even though Mr. Medenbach claims that the truck was there, the keys were in the ignition, he used the truck, he returned it to the wildlife refuge, the government has to show that he intended to steal the truck, take it away from the government, deprive the government of its use, and not return the truck. I've talked a little bit about the firearms charge. The firearms, there are a couple different elements of federal firearms charges. In some cases, you can be charged with unlawful possession of a firearm in a federal facility if you possess a firearm in a facility that is clearly and conspicuously marked not to allow firearms. That's the case in federal courthouses, for example, most post offices, a lot of other things. The law actually says that it is unlawful to possess firearms or other dangerous weapons, which includes a pocket knife over 3 inches long, in any federal facility, which is defined as any federal building, including, say, for example, a Forest Service outhouse. But in this case, because there were not signs conspicuously giving notice that possession of firearms was unlawful, what the government is charged is that these defendants possessed firearms while committing another crime, another federal crime on public property, not public property, federal property. And I'm going to come back in the next clip so that I can keep this one fairly short and talk about the conspiracy charge.